Hello, hello. This is Yusuf Henriques. Um, Thank you for joining us for the 2 o'clock. I see Carlo, you're here. Welcome, my brother, long time. And so today we're going to touch a little bit around mental health. We'll keep some discussion between you and myself. I'll let Carlo introduce himself once I introduce myself. So I'm Yusuf Enriquez. I'm founder of True Genomics, which is a mental health company. We're using genomics to determine your predisposition. I got into the field several years ago working for the Department of Veteran Affairs. And in the veteran community, which myself and Carlo is in, we're losing 22 veterans per day. And so it's been a passion, burning passion of mine, and we've been able to work with some of the leading institutions, Mount Sinai, NYU, Columbia, and the VA hospital, Department of Veteran Affairs, to come up with a blood test to look at individuals' predisposition. And so I stand here today as, to share my journey and in the way I look at mental health, being that I was a medic in the military, and what I'm doing now on the clinical research side and using genomics, which is the innovation that we brought to the table in order to help reduce suicides in veterans and also come up with some solutions around mental health. So, Carlo, I'll let you introduce yourself. Welcome, my brother, again, and we can get this started.
Sure thing. Thank you, Yusuf. Thanks for having me, MIT leadership here. And it's great to reconnect. It's been a while since we first linked up down in DC, so it's good to see you again. My name is Carlo Aragoncillo. I'm the Director of Veterans Affairs for the City of Philadelphia, not to be confused with the big VA, Department of Veterans Affairs. But that said, been, I think, 9 years, coming up on 10 years in the Army Reserve, Army veteran, came back home from Iraq. 2017, found myself in this position working for the city at the local municipality, working for City of Philadelphia City Council. That said, a lot of people ask, what is it that the office does? How do we operate? How do we function separate or in tandem with Department of Veterans Affairs? Think of us like the connective tissue, Yusuf, and I don't want to go into too much detail. I know you had a few questions, but that's what we do. We are in the community, out in the neighborhoods, making things happen with the VA.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, look, this is an open forum. I wanted you to join on board. So, we have a few, questions around, mental health that the MIT group had come up with. But, really, this is just a dialogue. I felt this was important to include our veteran community in this discussion. Being that we're both veterans and there's also a huge minority population in the military. I thought this would, something that we could definitely talk to and address, given, the lens that you sit at city level, what Philadelphia is doing from a city local government standpoint, and myself working at the VA level, FDA level from a government agency standpoint to see, how we could bring some of those stakeholders in for the main project that's the main event, which is in October. So we really wanted to do this listening session, and then this is really just to get folks engaged, and so we could take this back and start rounding up some of the other local government folks and some of the federal folks to make the event in October more meaningful.
Yeah, most definitely. So in terms of veterans, I don't know if I've shared this with you. Any time I get a chance to speak in a public setting, I explain to people, put yourself in not even a veteran's shoes, but anyone who's going through any major life transitions. I mean, just look at 2020, right? I mean, everything with COVID-19 to the social injustices that are happening now, even today. And, everything that I think has been discussed, I think Angel mentioned it in the previous segment, everything you could think of, from secure housing to food insecurity, employment, education, those things being the main staples. Aren't those things that we all want? So what I challenge a lot of people, not just elected officials, not just decision makers within city government, but what I ask them is, aren't these things that we could all benefit from? So when we're looking at it through the veteran lens of, okay, are your needs getting met in terms of, are you accessing the GI Bill? Are you getting the benefits for, physical and mental health care through the VA? What about, meaningful employment, not just employment, because a lot of veterans tend to be underemployed, but meaningful employment and, uh, economic opportunities, whether you start a business or you have enough money to transition to meet the lifestyle that you had while in service, to be able to put food on the table. I mean, those are things that, at the local level, we deal with on a day-to-day, working hand in hand with city council. It's a challenge for sure. But again, what I tell people all the time is if you focus on even just one veteran issue, those are the best practices and things that we can see replicated throughout the rest of the community, having rippling effects. So you want to look at the local level as a good sample set to help kind of work upstream as opposed to from the top down approach. So it's a good way to work together from where you're sitting and from where I am as well.
Absolutely. No, good. I mean, I really wanted, your perspective on that because that's one of the things that the way we see this hackathon moving forward is really getting engagement. And so, I think you've heard from the other panels around the stakeholders and what we're looking for. Mm-hmm. We're going to need buy-in from the state and local. Federal is good, but you need boots on the ground. And, I have to speak to you about that because your burning passion and what you've been doing up there in Philly has been tremendous. So yeah, I think it's going to take a village. We want to make sure, as we talked about, inclusion and making sure that everybody, right, LGBTQ community, the veteran community, because again, these are all individuals that are affected by this, given the population that they serve. So yeah, one of the big things, as you mentioned, the area that I focused on was really getting to the root from a genetic standpoint. We've heard the stories, and now that we've over the last 15 to 20 years have mapped the human genome, I took it a little bit more deeper level because as what I was seeing, being that I worked in the healthcare and had the scientific background. So, when I started hearing, and I lost a member in 2012 to suicide, which was a veteran, that really galvanized me to really go find out what else can we be doing other than just administering surveys, right? As you know, right now, the gold standards is these surveys. Now, while they're not bad, they also needs to be some additional innovation. And I think that's where, mental health around, racism that's been going on through this country for so long really needs to kind of start looking at from the root level of why some of these individuals are displaying some of the, you call it phenotype and psychological aspect, because we now know that this is something that has been carried from offspring to offspring. There's now scientific research that shows, individuals that have been affected by trauma, one could then put trauma on others because of the state of mental health that they're in, but also this could be a genetic component around the innovation. And so Mount Sinai Medical School, where I working with the VA a few years back, was able to really identify some key research and got funding. So another aspect of that is making sure local and federal government are putting funding within the mental health system to help do early detection, early prevention, and especially in the youth. Right. I know at some state we'll have to start looking at, where to start this new movement at. And so some individual will still continue with the current treatment that they've been on for 20 years. But what can we start doing now innovative wise to start really looking at, this from a two other lens and come up with real solutions with individuals that are going through it and I have some experience of what's been already done.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just said it right there. One of the key things you said was, starting with the youth. You think about it, when we're looking at a large metropolitan area like Philadelphia, depending on where you are in the city, maybe in not too many affluent, wealthy locations, you may be predisposed to a culture of violence. You could, depending on your household, how it's composed, taking that into consideration as well. The school system that you're attending also affects. So, I mean, there's so many different things to consider. And then say, you stand to and you want to join the military, right? Now you carry this baggage with you, this luggage, and say, hey, I'm going to take everything that I was born into, or this my household that I was growing up in, and bring that with you into the military. So now you're predisposed into again, a completely different culture, um, in terms of, okay, now, you know, it's a completely different structure, infrastructure that you're learning and training in. You know, now you're learning different skill sets that you may not have been used to, or ever been exposed to. Maybe what you've seen in TV or the movies. And whatever traumatic experiences you go through, whether it be pre-military, during military, or even post-military, when you reintegrate back into society, you are now a veteran, right? So it doesn't matter if you did a 4-year contract or if you did 34 years in the military. Everything that you've learned and been exposed to along the way, you carry with you, right? So the issue is, how are we affecting veterans, and you know, how are we impacting them positively? How are we getting them into the VA systems? How are we as my office, trying to support them, you know, socioeconomically, trying to provide them programs, you know, financial support, I mean, you name it. But when you really think about it, when you're looking at the larger picture, only two producers of veterans, right, are the DoD, Department of Defense, and DHS, if you're, you know, considering the Coast Guard. If we're able to go further left of when they separate from the military, then, you know, now you're creating a culture that's more inclusive, and you're providing them more resources, and you're changing and shifting the way that they transition. Versus, you know, I don't know, when you got out, me, I'm still serving, so I'm in a little bit of a different situation. Um, you know, maybe those things were available to you, maybe they were not, regarding VA home loans and things like that. You know, I don't know what your situation is exactly, but, you know, think about it, how, you know, years and years ago, generations ago, you know, we say World War II was the greatest generation, but, you know, when we came to Black veterans, when they transitioned home, thinking they were fighting overseas to you know, fight for equity and equality here in the States, they come back home, and everything that was afforded to their non you know, African American counterparts, like the VA home loan, VA education, GI Bill, those things are not afforded to them. I can specifically think of, off the top of my head, as a veteran, goes by the name of Mr. Nelson Harry Jr., Philadelphia, born and bred, went overseas, came back, and he was given a blue discharge. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, Yusuf, but blue discharge, so everyone knows, is, it's not other than honorable, it's not a dishonorable discharge, but it's not an honorable discharge. So it's kind of in between. And at the time, back in World War II, I think over 10,000 African-American veterans were given blue discharges, meaning it barred them from getting, you know, a VA home loan, to build equity, to, now that's generational, and then also not afforded the opportunity for education, so they can't get a better job, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, there's rippling effects. And think about it, you know, generations from then, you know, 2000s, early 2000s into now, how that can affect people, you know, youth today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you touched on what I wanted. You know, we didn't have, we could go on for days, but we wanted to touch one key area, and that's kind of where I wanted to. When I got out, it was the same thing. It was like the information never seemed to flow
Yeah.
to my non-African Americans the way they had all the information readily available. I had to go figure it out. So I got out of the military, you know, it was kind of like, here, thank you. And then I had to go, you know, follow a structure that I wasn't used to figure out where to go to get my ID card, where to get my veteran benefits. And then we started seeing that spill out into ratings, right? You know, I'm seeing, you know, more white veterans were getting higher disability ratings.
Yeah.
So to your point, yeah, it seemed like, you know, we all served in the same, you know, military, and then when we came out, the information just was not readily available. Now, the thing you brought up, I don't think they call it blue discharge anymore. Now, what I'm starting to see is a large percentage of minorities and Hispanic, African American coming out the military with these OTH, other than honorable,
Mm-hmm.
and then spend, you know, 2 to 3 years trying to get that overturned. And that gap right there is what I've been very vocal about, of where we're starting to see this large influx of suicide, you know, veteran suicide, because for 2 years that veteran is not able to access any of the things you just mentioned, because they were given, like you said, an in-between discharge. They call it other than honorable now, OTH.
Hmm.
And that's another area that I would like to, again, get your support on and get the rest of the local and community involvement in, is really start addressing those things, because I've seen about 300,000 soldiers that have got onto that, and it's showing around 60 to 70% or minorities that were given that OTH discharge, which limits their access to services that they had already fought for.
Hmm.
And so that's been a big issue of mine. Again, wanted to bring you here in on the panel. We didn't have a lot of time to discuss, but glad to see you. I know we're going to follow up and make this a super track once we get it nailed down in the next couple of weeks. And because of shortness of time, we're going to kind of end there. But I give you another 30 seconds to kind of, give your final thoughts, and look forward to working with you, my brother. Good seeing you.
Yeah, good seeing you. So I'll leave you with this, and I'll keep this short. I know we're up on time. The best thing we can do, I mean, this community, MIT, and what you all are doing is amazing. Being able to provide that platform. Let's not get caught up in the moment. Let's get caught up in the movement, right? So what I always talk to people about is advocate, 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 and really work with the legislators from the ground on up, because that's the only way we can make any change. So I appreciate you, Yusuf.
Yeah,
Thank you.
well, look, I'm glad I got a battle buddy with me, and see you next time.
Yeah, see you next time. Thank you so
All right,
much.
take it easy. Thanks.